Hello and welcome to Spardha Lines, your one-stop destination for the civil services preparation, UPSC, KPSC and other relevant examinations. Today we picked up a couple of important articles from the Hindu which are very significant from your UPSC and your KPSC examination point of view. Let's get started and look into the first article. Before that, a quick gentle reminder. Tomorrow, which is 3rd of December, what we will have is the current affairs test 2. So please do tune in and take this test. You will understand what are the questions that have been asked in the past, what will be the questions that will be asked in the near future, and it will prepare you and mold you to take up this examination in a proper channelized way. So for all those of you who are preparing for the CTI, PDO and the KAS exam, please do take up this test series, and this is both on the online as well as on the offline mode. So the first 4 current affairs tests will be free of cost. Let's look into the first article. The first article says improving the capability of the Indian state. What is this article speaking about? The article is speaking about the overall functioning of the government of India as well as the respective states. What exactly happens? We have few areas where the government presence should be minimal, but then in those areas what we have is the maximum government presence. There are few areas where the government presence required is maximum, but in those areas we have minimal government presence. The author also speaks about corruption in the Indian system. The author also speaks about no clarity when it comes to certain programs that have been executed. For example, you will require specialists who will execute a particular project, but these specialists are not even present in those departments because there are generalists in those departments. So it speaks about overall affairs of the Indian state, and what needs to be done going forward is what is this article all about. Let us try and understand what is the author trying to convey. The author in this case is speaking about business or building a business in the urban area. If at all the government of India is coming up with a program, let's say for example, it has taken up a new initiative where it says that the ease of doing business in the urban areas will be significantly improved over a period of time. This is a policy initiative taken by the government of India in the urban areas. Why? Because you have IT companies, BT companies and other manufacturing companies which will be mostly based in the urban areas. Since they are based in the urban areas, it is understood that what we require is a faster way of communicating with the business units. So ease of doing business will have to be improved over a period of time, but the major issue in all these cases is the permit raj. So in India, what we have is the permit raj, what we have is the license raj. Huge number of papers will have to be signed, and these individuals will have to go to one department as well as other department. So what we have is a lot of red tape that is existing in the system. Because of the existential issue that we have in the form of multiple departments, even though the government has the ease of doing business which has to be improved, because of the lot of red tape that exists in the market, what we have is issue in the market, which means more license raj, more permit raj and departmental inquiries. These ultimately have become a major issue, says the author. Added to it, the author also says in few areas what we require is more civil servants, but we do not have the civil servants. Smallest number of civil servants per capita are present in India, says the author. If you have to take the example, the public sector share in total employment in India is at 5.77%, is half the corresponding figures for Indonesia and China, and just about a third of that in the United Kingdom. 1600 per million, the number of central government personnel in India pales in comparison to 7500 in United States of America. Despite United States of America being a market-led economy where innovation is mostly based on the market, and government has completely less role when it comes to the market. Despite United States of America following such an approach, it has more personnel when it comes to the government sector. That is, there are more than 7,500 people, but in India we have very less number of civil servants. This is another area where the government has to look into. So in few areas where the government is to ensure that more number of civil servants has to be present, in those ways we do not have enough civil servants, says the author. What is the role of the state? Ideally, when you have these civil servants who are able to present in that particular domain, they have to invest usually on the health, education and the social security schemes and programs. But do we have enough investment from the government side? No, we do not have enough investment from the government side. Then students learning outcomes, child and maternal mortalities, farm and firm productivity, traffic conditions and crime rates are continue to increase as well. Are we working on any of these sectors? Despite efforts taken by the government of India, we do not have enough outcome from it. What do you understand the difference between output and outcome? Let me explain this with the help of an example. Let's say, for example, you have the Swachh Bharat mission. The Swachh Bharat mission basically wants to create more toilets in India and ultimately want to prevent open defecation in our country. What is output here? The number of toilets built by the government of India is the output. So the government of India says we have built about 1 lakh toilets when it comes to the rural areas. It makes a statement and issues a statement that 1 lakh toilets have been made. So the output is about 1 lakh. So we feel happy. But what happens in outcome when it comes to these toilets? Are people actually using it? Are people making use of these toilets? Do we have water supply to these toilets? Are there enough measures that have been taken to clean this toilet? This is the outcome. So despite having the toilets, we do not have people using it. So the output may be greater, but the outcome is less when it comes to such scenarios. So the author in this case goes on to say that we might have had health related policy, education related policy, social security related policy, learning outcomes for the children, maternal mortality rates reducing over a period of time, yet we do not have outcome that is met for all these domains, says the author. Then there is created by the public institution, and then there is skill gap among officials. These factors have eroded the ability of the political, executive and civil services to make and implement sound policies. Let's say, for example, when it comes to the bureaucracy in India, what do we have? We have a generalist. Who is a generalist? He is like a manager. He is not technically sound, but he is able to manage a certain section of the people. When it comes to the IAS in India, who are the IAS? They are the generalists. Today they'll be in the tourism department, tomorrow they will be in, let's say, home department, or day after tomorrow they will be in the finance department, so on and so forth. So what the author says is these generalists are not able to keep a pace with the modern era. Why? That is because what actually is required is technological backing, technological upgradation. We have to change with changing times, but we continue to use the generalists in all these areas where the speciality is required, specialization is required. So there is a gap that exists. This gap is ultimately leading to the problem, says the author. There is extreme concentration of policy making and implementation powers within the department. So it means that most of these powers are concentrated within the departments, and these departments are taking most of these functions, and ultimately they are implementing these functions. But despite that, they are not able to meet the outcome that has been established. Experience of countries such as Australia, Malaysia, United Kingdom show that separating policy making and implementation responsibilities expedites execution and encourages innovation, making the programs better suited to local context. The Indian case in point is the National Highways Authority of India, which is tasked with executing national highway projects while policy decisions are made at the ministry level. This is one advantage, and this is one area where we have had an advantage. So this mechanism should be implemented in couple of other areas and departments, says the author. Further, the author takes into picture policymakers exhibit a lack of technocratic skills to govern an increasingly complex country. In the absence of adequate capability to deal with economic, financial, contract and other technical matters, the center and states hire consultancy firms. What do I mean by consultancy firms? Let's say, for example, ideally we have to, let's say, execute a UGD program, underground drainage program. We do already have engineers at the government level, but despite having the engineers, despite having the developmental program, despite having the manpower, we are yet not able to fulfill the needs of that UGD, that is the underground drainage. So what do? We outsource a particular kind of work to individuals or to organizations, companies, consultancy firms, so on and so forth. So what this article says is that instead of doing it, we can save on the money. So why not make use of the manpower, hire more people and execute the same amount of work in India? Then there is regular lateral entry which can also be made use of by the mid-level and senior levels, which can help the civil services size technocratic gap. So hire more lateral work, which means to say you have specialists who are present, hire them, ensure that you have more number of people within the government and qualified officers in non-IAS services like the Indian Revenue, Statistical, Economic should be able to get fair positions. So as of now, most of the leaders, or you have the persons who are heading a department, will be IAS. What if it's a railway department? The railway department is one which has specialization, which has technology, and it means they would have learned over a period of time. Why bring in an IAS to head this department? Why not give the officers of the railway service the head of the position? This has to be changed, says the author. And further, the author says we have to recruit more number of people. When it comes to US Securities and Exchange Commission, it has 4,500 experts to govern corporates. Similarly, the professional strength of the RBI is less than 7,000 and is tiny compared to US Federal Reserve, which has as many as 22,000 odd officials. So the SEBI, which we have, has very less number of people. The RBI has very less number of people. When you juxtapose and compare these two groups, like RBI with the Federal Reserve and the SEBI with the US Securities and Exchange Commission, this clearly emphasizes on the fact that other countries have more specialists in the country rather than India. Then the tendency of other oversight agencies, the Central Vigilance Commission, the Central Bureau of Investigation and courts to use inside information without appreciating the context has made the bureaucrats averse to exercising discretion in policy matters. What do I mean by it? It means that I am a bureaucrat, I am an IAS officer. I want to take up an initiative, but I do not take up an initiative and a policy decision primarily because I will be constantly irritated. I will be constantly be asked questions by the vigilance team or by the coach, despite me having taken up that decision with utmost bona fide intent. Yet what we have is issues when it comes to such areas. So what do the bureaucrats do? They do not want to take up new innovative mechanisms despite knowing that it will be a successful one, because if it goes wrong, despite having a bona fide intention, what you will have is the coach or the vigilance team which will hound you as well, and ultimately I may be thrown behind bars as well. In order to reduce it, this measure has to be taken up, that is, a certain leverage should be given to the bureaucrats so that they are able to apply their mind, come up with an innovation thought process. Appealing against arbitration and court awards have become the default mode by officials. What do I mean by it? Let's say, for example, we have the National Highways Authority of India. The National Highways Authority of India, let's say it has entered into a contract with another company, let's say A company. This A company basically will execute the project, and National Highway Authorities of India will pay the money. So they have to execute the project, lay roads to it, and ultimately money will be paid by NHAI. In the contract, there would also be a clause of arbitration. What is this arbitration? In this case, they won't be going to the court, but instead they will appoint an arbitrator basically to understand what has been the issue between these two parties, and the arbitrator will conclude whether the justice has to be provided to company A or to the National Human Rights Commission. So these people would be district judges who would be retired, or high court judges who would be retired, or people who have been in the profession of law for a very long period of time. They know how law works, judges work, and ultimately they will give a fair opinion, and they will also pass an order as well. Despite the arbitrator passing an award, the idea or the intention of arbitration is reduced to go to the court work. We should not be going to the court. But when arbitrator is appointed, he makes an order. In most of the cases, despite it being the very good order, they continue to go to the courts. So what is the view of the arbitration, which should have ideally reduced pendency of cases, is not able to do, because after this order is passed, they go on an appeal and it continues to be present in the court system. So the author says that what we require is such measures where when you have one party and another party who have entered into an arbitration agreement, in cases where it is not been like showing like in negative limelight, or there is no bias in one favor, in that case it has to be accepted, says the author. Further, performance linked pay and incentive schemes such as bonuses, which work well in the private sector, are not effective in the public sector. The public sector must attract intrinsically motivated individuals to contribute to the social good. The solution lies in moderate pay rises by the Future Pay Commission and reduction in the upper age limit for the government jobs. So since we have to ensure that people also do enter the government sector, incentives should have to be provided so that we have more technocrats who enter the government service, is what is this article all about. So the author overall lays out that there are some areas which we have to keenly look into and bring changes. This is what is called as the state or role of the state when it comes to the social sector, says the author. Now let's look into the next article. This article says loss and damage fund. What is this loss and damage fund? This happens to be a corpus of money and technologies that will be replenished by the developed countries and used by the rest to respond to the more unavoidable effects of the climate change. What do I mean by it? It means that we will have something called as the L&D funds. Who will contribute to this L&D funds? What we will have is the developed countries. So it's a corpus. Into this corpus you will have the developed countries which will start contributing a certain amount of money. Once they start contributing the money to this particular coffer and to the L&T fund, this money will be taken out by the developing countries, and in case of any ramifications because of the climate change, they can make use of this money and take necessary steps as well. Let's say for example, we have Maldives. Maldives, what is happening? There is excessive excessive sea water which is increasing. So most of the lands that Maldives has is gobbled up, which is eaten by the climate change. There is sea erosion as well, and ultimately people do not have land as well. So in order to counter this, they have bought land in some other part of the world that happens to be used by the Maldives. So a certain amount of money in this fund will be made use of to fight the challenges of the climate change. In this case, what we also have to look into is the TNC, that is the Transitional Committee. The announcement was dearly won. At the end of COP27 talks in Egypt, member states agreed to launch a fund thanks largely to the steadfast efforts of the G77 bloc of countries. 4 meetings of Transitional Committee were to follow to determine how money has to be distributed, but the issues in this committee meeting was spilled over into an ad hoc meeting, highlight how newly operationalized fund, while signaling optimism, a diplomatic victory for its emerged president, has crucial issues. What are these issues? Despite coming up with a fund, they have issues, says the author. What are these issues? First, it will be hosted by the World Bank for an interim period of 4 years and will be overseen after that by an independent secretariat. So for the first few years, what we will have is a World Bank which will monitor these funds, and after that what we will have is an independent body in the form of a secretariat which will monitor and give out money and how money has to be spent. The bank is expected to charge a significant overhead fee. Developing countries resisted this proposal at first because yielding at the TC5 meeting in exchange for some concessions. So the first major issue is that bank is expected to charge a certain overhead fee. This fee should not be given, is what the developing countries say, but it is yet not decided. Second, while some countries have committed amounts to the fund, from 10 million by Japan to 100 million each by Germany and UAE, whether they will be periodically replenished is not clear. As of now, you have countries like Japan, Germany and UAE who have put money into this fund. Whether it will be replenished, that is, will I be adding on periodic basis? I have added this year, will I add it in the next year? Will I start adding it in the subsequent year? Is what has to be committed by the developed countries. As of now, yes, they have invested in this fund so that developing countries can make use of it, but overall, will they be doing it for the future as well? That is once again questionable and is yet not answered. That happens to be another issue. And finally, the World Bank will have to meet conditions on managing the fund, including a degree of transparency it has not booked so far, and submit a report to the parties to the Paris Agreement. If the stewardship is determined to be unsuitable, the fund can exit the World Bank. The L&D fund's contents need to be easily accessible to those who need it most in timely fashion, and bureaucratic hurdles and sufficient quantities should be reduced. So the bureaucracy should also ensure that we do not have red tape when it comes to the climate change factors, says the author. And transparency should maintain as to whom, from whom to whom the money is being sent, and the same report will have to be given to the consulting authorities, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, Interpol meet, India asks member nations to deny criminals safe haven. This article basically is speaking about the Interpol meet. What is the Interpol meet? We have the Central Bureau of Investigation. The Central Bureau of Investigation is a member of Interpol from India. Similarly, you will also have investigating agencies from a couple of countries. They all meet up together in a conference and they decide what are the issues that exist when it comes to the global cooperation, when it comes to the criminal investigation. For example, there can be a one person who is present in India. He might have committed an illegal act, economic offense, or he might be a Khalistani fundamentalist, or he can be a radicalist who is present in India, committed an illegal act, but now has moved to another country. Now what will India do? India already has an extradition treaty. India already has terms and conditions that it has entered into with another country as well. So making use of this, what they will ask is countries to ensure that this criminal is sent back to India. So the Interpol meet basically will see who are the criminals present in their own countries who have moved to another country, and there they have been living for a very long period of time. This person should have been brought back to the home country and should have been executed with illegal offense, but yet there are no functionalities that is existing between one country and another. So in order to ensure that these issues are completely removed, what we have is the 91st Interpol General Assembly, which has urged member countries to deny safe haven to criminals and the proceeds of crime. What is the proceeds of crime? This is where the PMLA comes into the picture. What is PMLA? Prevention of the Money Laundering Act. What is proceeds of the crime? Let's say, for example, they have committed an illegal offense, they've got the money and they're making use of money to live a lavish life. So that is called as the proceeds of the crime. So they've already committed an illegal act. Despite committing an illegal act, they're using this money that they've generated illegally to spend for their lavish life. So if there are people who are of such type, for example, we have the Mahadev app, which has been in use recently. So in Mahadev app, you had individuals who committed an illegal act. They ensure that money is taken illegally and now they are living a lavish life where in Dubai. So asking such people to be sent back to India is what was the intent of this. So the plea comes against the backdrop of Indian efforts to ensure terrorists, including pro-Khalistan elements and other wanted persons, are extradited or deported from countries such as Canada, United States, United Kingdom, so forth and so forth. So far this year, 24 criminals and fugitives wanted by India have been returned from abroad through close coordination via Interpol challenges, one of the highest annual totals. India has geolocated 184 criminals in various countries and initiated formal proceedings for their return. So these are some of the measures that have been taken and have been requesting other Interpol countries to ensure that they send the criminals. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says UAE announces 30 billion fund to boost climate investments. We have the COP28, that is the Conference of the Parties 28, which is currently being hosted by United Arab Emirates. What is this entirely? We will take it up eventually over a period of time. I'll record an independent video and upload as well. But for now, what you have to understand is UAE has announced a 30 billion commitment to an investment fund called as Altera. So who has released this investment fund called as Altera? You will have as a prelim question. So this fund was released by United Arab Emirates. So the privately managed funds aim to mobilize 250 billion globally by 2030 and be the largest of its kind, geared towards climate investments, transforming emerging markets and developing economies. So what does it want to do with this fund? It wants to provide a transformational solution, attract private capital, create multiple layers for the climate focused investment, and ultimately ensure that constant finance is provided to the climate change modules, so that what we have is successful implementation. So Altera will have 4 key verticals, namely energy transition, industrial decarbonization, sustainable living, as well as climate technology. These are the initiatives that are taken by the United Arab Emirates, and this will be part of the Conference of Parties 28. We will release an independent video for the same, but as of now, remember, Altera is an initiative taken up by United Arab Emirates. Now let's look into the next article. This article says PIB flags 9 YouTube channels for fake news. We have the government of India which had come up with an initiative. It said that what we will have is the government broadcasting ministry which will look for fake news and ultimately disperse the information to the general public. In line with it, what we have is the PIB which has now flagged 9 YouTube channels with over 83 lakh subscribers for allegedly spreading fake news and misinformation. They are alleged to have misattributed derogatory statements to persons occupying constitutional positions, including Chief Justice of India and the Prime Minister. The channels are Bajrang Education, Aapke Guruji, BJ News, Sansani Live TV, GVT News, Daily Study, Bharat Ekta News, Ab Bolega Bharat, and Sarkari Yojana Official. These channels on YouTube are creating more fake news, and this should be avoided, says the article. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. So if you're liking these initiatives, please do like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and share it with your fellow aspirants as well. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.